Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Rosie Shatkin, and I am the Government Relations Manager at the Oregon Liquor and soon-to-be Cannabis Commission. I am here to provide you with a brief update on our agency's legislation for 2021. And my colleagues Bill Schuette and Chris Wayne will discuss the budget and funding for the warehouse. As Director Marks pointed out during the session and at the end of the session, it has been an extraordinary session for OLCC. The legislators and the governor recognizing the work on behalf of our licensees, and during the first historical virtual session, which is quite unusual. Nevertheless, the legislators reached out and were very collaborative with the work on behalf of OLCC. And given the magnitude of the challenges from last year to this year, we nevertheless were able to see an unprecedented amount of bills this session. I've organized many of these bills along the alcohol policy legislation, the cannabis legislation that came out, and we worked a bit on the bottle bill brought forth by the Legislative Assembly to discuss changes to how we go about doing the bottle bill. That bill did not get past this session, but they're continuing to work on that. Most importantly, I think for me personally, I was just really proud to work with a group of people from the alcohol policy legislation we worked on, and the cannabis. Great, smart people that brought forth a number of technical changes. The legislators listened and realized that it was going to be extraordinarily impactful on our licensees, and wanted to ensure that we, OLCC, were working with our licensees as well during this time, and a number of bills are passed along those lines. In particular, we've dubbed it the CROI amendments, but House Bill 2264 probably has about 10 different technical changes within that bill alone. And I will share that with you guys later on. But I'll end there, and if you have any questions for me specific to any of the bills that we have, I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Commissioners? You did an excellent job in keeping us informed. I think, listen, this was an unprecedented year for us. It was wonderful. You need to take some credit for that, obviously. And I'm sure I'm talking for the complete commission when we say we're very happy with you.
Thank you. Definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Steve?
Yeah, well, just to add on to Rosie's testimony, it was an incredibly prolific session for all.
Yeah.
I actually characterize it as the most prolific since Prohibition. You know, we got the name change, we got a number of alcohol policy changes that are technical, a new warehouse, pretty incredible amount of work and an unprecedented amount of budget. And then we pioneered, you know, House Bill 3000 on marijuana policy and getting Delta 8 and some of those intoxicants out of the main marketplace in Oregon and away from kids, and to press on sort of what's going on in Southern Oregon with some cartel takeover of the cannabis growing through the guise of hemp, and our role in being able to enforce that is all incredibly important. So the legislature gave us a lot of kudos and a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of new policy, and now we have a lot more work to do. That comes with all this. So I think we've got to buck up and realize that. And then I think the other part that's sort of on my mind with this budget and where the agency has to go is, you know, we've really got to help all of our licensees, the hospitality industry, alcohol, cannabis, move on to post-COVID recovery. We've got a lot of challenges there to work with the industry on over the next 2 years to make sure that Oregon's economy is strong, and that we do our part with that with the resources given and the very, very talented staff that we had to produce all this work. It couldn't have been done without a lot of talent on the staff, from the alcohol side and getting the Dan Croy Memorial Bill up. Dan, you're out there. I know you're in the building. But we appreciated all of that work from everyone on alcohol policy, from the incredibly fast and deft work of the marijuana policy folks that put together 3,000. I mean, that was enterprise in the middle of session and is a fundamental piece of this legislature's work. So I'm very proud of Rosie, who brought new inroads into the legislature with her experience there. It was incredibly gratifying to watch our people work. And of course, Chris pre-carried the warehouse and put that investment forward, and we had, put in a lot of work on that, and that went very smoothly with the legislature, and I think they appreciated that. And then we earned for our liquor distillery agents, for our agents, additional compensation that we've been looking for, a fundamental change in that compensation scheme. So incredible session, and a lot to do to help Oregon recover from COVID with what we have. So looking forward to the next 2 years with the resources given.
Good. What I'm about to say, it's right here in this room is the most proper place to say it. In this day and age, if any business is going to survive, they have to understand what the trends are going to be, what the future is going to be, and they have to anticipate that, or else you're dead in the water. There's no way that you can stand on your own laurels in business today. So consequently, the reason why I said that is that this agency is the second or third largest revenue producer for the state of Oregon, period. In the next 3 to 5 years, we are probably going to surpass or close to being $2 billion in revenue combined. I applaud the legislature for understanding that we couldn't do that without them supporting us 100% in everything they did in this legislative session. So kudos go out to the legislature as well as to everybody in this room. It's a combined effort, because if we didn't do this, we'd be dead in the water. And that's really an unbelievable thank you to everybody, because for the first time in 4 years since I've been here, this place, in terms of the legislative concept, is understanding how important this agency is to the state. So again, thank you for everybody.
Thank you.
It's nice to be able to say that, isn't it?
Yes, extraordinary.
I'd rather say that than yell and scream.
And it's nice to see you in person.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And you don't have to be nervous.
I am the biggest.
It's okay, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
do have a quick question, actually, Chair, and Steve, I don't know if maybe you can answer this, but there has been some great work done, the 2021 Oregon legislature. There's been a lot of moving parts, especially for the hospitality industry. How are we getting that information out to those folks, restaurants and bars? We know what has happened, but how are we getting that information out to those folks that need that relief, to know that information?
That's a great question.
Right. Nathan Ricks, are you online with us today? Nathan's on vacation. Nathan is working with the PACE team to put together all the information on the way the industry can get assistance, the federal assistance, what the state has provided. So we're going to be a conduit for getting that to the hospitality industry in particular. And so that's going to be our main focus in that. And Nathan's team's taking it on, and we'll show you the work as we put it together. But I think that'll help us do what we can to direct our licensees to the right place to work on getting loans, grant funding, others that were primarily supported by federal money. So we'll be working a lot with coordinating with economic development on that, or Business Oregon on that, to be able to convey the information. We didn't obviously get a granting program directly within OLCC, but looking to do that. And then I think I'm actually going to be meeting with Orla, I think on the 30th, the Hospitality Association. So we'll be talking about what their priorities are for us that we can help with as we think about the next 2 years of recovery, what it means. And as you all know, retaining workers and getting back up and getting businesses running regularly and understanding the local ordinances, really important. I know one thing that they have on their mind with this is the outdoor seating rule and making sure we stay stable for a while on that as they work through how local government may make changes, some to, recognize the post-COVID environment. But we'll be working on that clearly with them. And I think the other thing that industry has wanted that we will be project working on this session is clearly the 2-year licensing concept, which is going to be available in our IT package. We're going to set that up to be able to accomplish it. We've got policy work to do with the industry and local government to accommodate 2-year alcohol licensing.
Great, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Chris Mayton. I'm the Distilled Spirits Program Director for ULCC, and I'm here to give you your regular, frequent warehouse and HQ relocation update. As Rosie just mentioned to you, the bills for construction and our bonds were approved by legislation. They have yet to be signed by the governor still, so we're still waiting on that. But they paved the way for our future progress. I gave you an update last month, said that we had looked at some properties. Those properties are still confidential with our real estate transactions, so we can't really discuss them, as you know. But we are working with DAS right now to finish the RFP for those locations, so we can submit it to them for negotiations to see if, what the best buy for us would be. We expect that to take place over the course of the next month and then bring through an executive session in August to you so that you can hear the pros and cons for each of the locations. Other than that, really, we've been working diligently with DAS space planning to understand what our needs are from a staffing perspective for space. With COVID happening, there's a lot of transition and change that's happening across the state with agencies, so we're making sure that we're going to be utilizing the right amount of space for the number of employees that we have. The warehouse is pretty lockstep. We know what we need. We projected it out for the next 30 years, so we know the space we're looking for. But really on the HQ side, we got to figure out how the offices and cubicles look. So not much more of an update on that, except for next month, we should be able to bring you the locations with detail, and you'll be able to weigh in on those spots in your executive session. Any questions I can answer for you?
How much competition is out there for those spots?
Quite a bit. There's 4 spots, and I know that at least 2 of them already have considerable people looking at them. And there's fierce competition for those spaces. So I like to believe that we're a good buyer because we're the state and we have a good reputation. But it's all about the speed at which we move. Every day that goes by, there's more people in the market. As you may be aware, Amazon just announced recently their major acquisition down at Woodburn. When they made their purchase, that brings a lot of pullers to that same market area. So there's even more people fighting to get into the industrial commercial space. It's a hot market already, and with real estate prices in Portland continuing to be on the rise, now's the time. So we're in it at the right moment. We just have to make sure that we move as fast as the private sector does, and I think we're moving as fast as we can within our right with the legislative session happening and waiting for the bond approvals. And you're okay as well.
Nothing is being done on these premises until we understand where we're going.
Correct. We and Dash will come back next month and give you some more detail. But what I can tell you is that with these properties, because we've accepted the overall summary of them, the high level view looks like they'll all work for us. We have a obligation to negotiate for each of those properties. And within each of those negotiations, that's what we'll bring back to you next month in your executive session to let you know what that looks like and feels like from a space consideration, from maybe even a value proposition and the size of the location.
Commissioners, any questions?
Chair.
Commission?
I just want to share the excitement and how proud I am for the staff in the warehouse. Each of them and us potentially could have dealt with an issue in regards to COVID, but just an issue in life. I just want to say that I am And I'm deeply touched by what goes on in the warehouse and how your staff has come forward through so many difficult times, and the caring that I see in the warehouse. It makes me a proud commission member, and makes me just be able to say I'm here with you for all of our employees here with the OLCC. So thank you, Chris, for what you do to getting the product out and dealing with issues and customers all over the state. I just want to say thank you personally.
Commissioner Arbor, Chairman, thank you. I don't deserve that credit. That's Nikki Leslie and her team. They do a great job with expectation. Even Brian on the retail side, our stores have stayed open every day. We ship constantly, and that's due to the due diligence that the managers of that warehouse have worked with the employees that arrived. We've had about 50% to 55% active show rate for the last 15 months. It's been very difficult, but they have all worked together from the front line, and then other departments in the agency, if you didn't know. Jason Hansen, who I saw up on the monitor, he's come down and thrown cases on that belt in crunch time. It's been a collective effort by the agency, a lot of divisions involved, but we appreciate that. But I humbly pass that down to Nikki Leslie and her great team in distribution.
Chris, I'm directing this to you, but Assistant Director Higgins and Director Marks should be listening closely to what I'm about to say. A little history is that before I came here, I was vice chair of the Port of Portland, and they put me in charge of the construction, the new construction at the airport and the new building. And the only thing that I insisted at that time, besides everything else, was that the commissioners will have a say at that time on what the new commission meeting room would look like.
I hear you loud and clear, Chairman.
That's true. We did. And it turned out beautifully if anybody's ever been up there.
Well, I'm fortunate enough.
The commission has had a voice in it.
I think that is the expectation. Just so you know, I'm a sponsor of the warehouse side. Our ASD director does the HQ side where the commission room is, but I'll make sure I pass that forward to Deputy Director Higland and Executive Director Marks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I've got, well, not so much on the warehouse, but would you mind if I had a question on
Not
retail
at all.
services? And Brian, is Brian still around here?
There he is.
Hey, Brian. I was hoping you could share with us, commissioners, I don't know if all of us have been privy to, I certainly have, because this is my district, but can you give us an update on the Northeast Gleason location? This is a new expansion store that we just awarded a recipient. Can you give us an update on this store? We've had some concerns from some neighbors regarding this location.
Sure, and I think Steve will chime in. Obviously, this has risen to a different level, and I guess the one thing with expansion is we've covered some big metro kind of mall markets. And what we did here in this phase is smaller locations in communities where there was significant population with narrow strips of retail. Steve Marks is well aware of all the comments. I've reached out to the agent 2 days ago. We had a conference call. He was going to talk to some community members or reach out because he knows the opposition is there. There is within that, and Kiana, you know this because you've been given all of the comments, but there's a marijuana shop, a restaurant, bar, the new liquor store location that was approved at Phase 6 expansion. But it's going nowhere until Steve has gone through every bit of the information and share with you as well as the chairman. And then in the event it does rise to the level in the future, potentially it's a commission action. But at this point, Steve, Chris, myself, we've all discussed it. We see the pros and cons of the comments, and it will go nowhere until everybody is informed and understands the location. As a side note, Fremont Street, which you're very familiar with, just got posted a day or so ago And I anticipate more comments from both sides again, because it's in a small community, and not everybody wants a liquor store in their neighborhood, although, you know, there's stores that sell beer and wine. So all of that will be huge consideration before we just say, we're not going to rubber stamp it. And Steve, I'll go to you if you have any comments.
Brian, you did a great job. Thank you. Yeah, we will be looking at all the information. Want to meet with the neighborhood association. They were most recent email, you may have seen it. We're asking for a timeline on decision. I don't have a timeline. Obviously, we'd like to conclude this as quick as we can. The agent, prospective agent's anxious to also get to a weeks if that's the decision to move forward. So I'd say in the next 2 weeks, we'll be getting closer to it. If it comes back to the commission, they'll come back at the next regular meeting of the commission. So if we have it and move it back towards you, and the process here is really, we're looking for significant public opposition. We'll be working with you to determine that, and particularly with Kiana and the chair, about whether this comes back to the commission or whether we move forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
And as a follow-up to the commissioners, in speaking with the appointed agent, he does have a relationship with the landlord. He'd like to get signed very soon, but he has a little bit of wiggle room, although others are trying to lease it. But because he has an established relationship, he knows the long-term commitments of liquor stores. So we have some room here with, trying to get it leased to him. And more importantly, they've already began the renovation, no matter who was going in there. So there's brand new floors going in, the outside of the building, and all that stuff is all in process. It's months away from opening, though.
Has this agent incurred any costs? Have they put any money into the space?
At this point, Commissioner Floyd, no, other than, the research, the money spent. He's done some spent. He's an attorney by trade, if you will. He did give his notice, which with the firm he's at, because you had asked that you wanted to see him on site. I think that was the chairman. He is definitely committed to the dual store operation, but he at the end of August, he may not have his current general counsel career, but that's up to him.
Thanks, Brian.
No significant costs at this time.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. We're going on to Bill Schuette and the 2021 budget update. Bill, how does it feel like having people back in the office with you now?
It's very different. I've been in the office for the past 14 months for a variety of reasons, primarily because I don't have high-speed internet in my house. It's pleasant. It's actually nice to have people to talk to besides over the computer screen. So, commissioners, Chair Rosenbaum, for the record, I am Bill Schuette, the Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. Probably the last time I will use that name. I'm here before you today to provide an update on the agency's budget that was approved by the legislature for the most recent session for the 21-23 biennium. That biennium started July 1st. As a reminder, state budgets are on a biennium basis, and the numbers reflect the next 2 years of spending that we are appropriated to have. As Director Marks mentioned, this was a very, very, very good budget for us. The Oregon legislature provided OLCC with total expenditure approval of $301.9 million. That is up from last biennium of $258.9 million in our legislative budget for the biennium that just ended on June 30th. This is about a $43 million increase, or 17%. For comparison, the last budget was only about a $27 million increase. So again, they were very good to us. Approval was provided for funding and bonding to move forward on a project for the new warehouse with the accompanying enterprise modernization information technology systems to run our warehouse along with the conveyor system to move product within the warehouse. Projected cost at this point for that project is $90 million. To finance this project, the Department of Administrative Services will issue bonds for sale in May of 2022, and with an annual debt service of approximately $7.5 million. So instead of paying the entire $90 million up front, we're going to be paying annual payments of almost $7.5 million. In addition to that, there was significant increases to the compensation paid both the liquor store agents and the distillery outlet agents. $13.5 million for liquor store agents was appropriated. This basically moves their average compensation rate from 9% to 10%, but it gives a larger boost to the stores, especially in large metropolitan areas that are incurring a lot of higher costs due to minimum wage increases and lease increases. $3.5 million was also appropriated for distillery agent tasting rooms, again moving their effective compensation rate from 17 to 25%, so they can make a little more on their sales directly out of their outlets. I can say that even though liquor sales were extraordinary during the COVID period, distillery agent sales did take a big hit. So this hopefully will provide a good boost to them to recover. In addition, all the distillery formulas, all the agent compensation formulas are now in statute through Senate Bill 316 and House Bill 2740. That's good news for me, so I don't have to track it as closely anymore. If it's in statute, we just apply the numbers and we pay them. Although there still is limitation in our budget for both of those. The administrative budget for the agency, including distilled spirits, administration, public safety, and marijuana, saw an increase of 25 new positions to the agency. Primary investments included $684,000 for alcohol compliance and licensing, primarily in the management area. $1 million for human resources for 4 positions related to the recruiting of new positions with the agency, including the 25 that are coming on. $522,000 for information technology positions to help manage the new projects that are upcoming. $394,000 for liquor store auditing and payroll system enhancements. $1.1 million for ongoing costs related to the online beer and wine tax system that will be continuing the next biennium. We are in the process now of in the middle of launching that system. Breweries and brew pubs just went live as of June 30th. And the next stage will be wineries and wine outlets. And then finally, $1.8 million for marijuana licensing and regulatory positions to investigate and then help with the regulation of marijuana, especially in Southern Oregon, the issues that are having down there. And then this budget also included a transfer of $488,000 to the Department of Agriculture to help them with pesticide issues that they're having related to the marijuana industry as well. And with that, I'll close and take any questions.
Commissioners? It's interesting.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. There's a lot of money being thrown around in the whole federal government. That's another story. Okay. Thank you, sir. Michael, welcome. Good to see you again. It seems so strange. It's been 15 months. Has it? It's been 15 months?
So that's in February of 2020?
No, January, wasn't it? Because February, we canceled the meeting in February. Oh, yeah, we canceled the February meeting. I remember that because I was going to fly in.
Wow.
So it was January was our last meeting of 2020. Oh.
Chair.
Commissioner?
I'd like to share, I think it's when we do these stipulated settlements, it's one line that always touches me is the licensee accepts responsibility for the violation. And I want to say that prior to us beginning today, we as commissioners, we have questions on each of these settlements. And I've been here quite a while, and I always see licensee accepts responsibility. And I want to share that prior to starting. And as we discuss some of these issues, which some are just crazy. I mean, some of the things that we see and some of the things we try to document and share. But, and I also see licensee requests, withdrawal for hearing. So I just want to share with you, I see it, staff, and I see what the hard work your department is putting in there. So I just want to say again, thank you so much. You worked countless hours prior to bringing these issues to us as required by state statute, and I just appreciate that. So thank you, Michael, and I'm gonna beat you up later. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair Rosenbaum, members of the commission, I'm Michael Shine, lead worker for the Hearings Division. And we would like to present for ratification 2 alcohol stipulated settlements. Any questions?
Let's take them one at a time. Let's start with the alcohol violation stipulation settlement agreements. Any questions? If not, I need a motion, please.
I do have a question. And just to preface before I ask these questions, I too also appreciate all the work that goes into these violations and you bringing them before us, Michael, I do. But I've got some mixed feelings in regards to the River Pig Saloon. And particularly because this was during a time that his business was completely shut down from the executive order. So when we read and it says in the synopsis, served themselves alcohol or alcoholic beverages and consumed while on duty, I mean, that's not entirely accurate because this business was closed. It was shut down and they weren't on duty in the sense that when we're reading this, it sounds like they were open to the public. These owners were there holding a private Zoom on their premises. There was, I believe, less than 6 people there. It was a DJ, a guitarist, his cousin, and himself. And which, let me remind you, and commissioners, this was April 2nd. So we're talking 2 weeks after the executive order. So this was very, very new to many of us licensees. We were still wrapping our head around what this executive order was. There wasn't at the time, let me just say, maybe there was a little lack of clarity at that point. We're talking 2 weeks in. So, you know, he didn't have customers in there. The business was completely closed. And I'm wondering why didn't we give this licensee the benefit of education first? We talk about that a lot. We're 2 weeks into the executive order, still all of us trying to figure out what exactly this means. Why didn't we just give him a warning?
Well, actually, we did not even a formal written warning, but verbal instruction, possibly also a written warning regarding the governor's order violation, because as you point out, Commissioner Floyd, that was new territory. We did not, you'll notice there's not a violation for that before you. The other charges here are kind of traditional liquor charges, drinking on duty, and I'll address what you just talked about for on duty, and self-service. These are long-standing kinds of violations that we have lots of precedent on over the years. We have specific definition in the rules. In 0345, on duty for a licensee is when you have the ability to put yourself on duty outside of regular business hours when you're acting on behalf of the business. They were doing a Zoom call for their customers with the idea that they would publicize their business. So it was kind of on behalf of the business that they were working to keep everybody reminded that they were there and available as your local bar. And so that analysis was applied based on the language of the rule and many years of precedent that they were acting on behalf of the business when they did this. It wasn't just private in the sense that it was broadcast out on the internet and part of the publicity for the business. So that's the analysis that was on duty, and then, you know, the charges themselves were things that the licensee himself recognized, said, yeah, I know we're not supposed to, you know, let people go behind the bar and pull out the bottles and open them themselves, which is what was going on here.
Yeah, I just kind of, you know, when I read it's on duty, it kind of paints a different picture, you know, because again, this was just, it was private, the doors were closed, you know, it kind of paints a different picture here. And I'm curious, how did staff discover this violation? Because it's my understanding it wasn't from an on-site inspection, correct?
No, it was from finding the broadcast on the internet.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly. I believe it was their social media page for the establishment. So it was through an internet search.
So are you saying that there could have been a charge for the Zoom party was against the COVID restrictions at the time?
Yes, there was no on-premises consumption allowed. That includes staff. And so there was I know the inspector gave verbal instruction about violation of the executive order. That was the first executive order that was in place at the time. And I could check back and get back to you as to whether we issued a formal written warning. But again, as I said, we did not charge for that because for the reasons Commissioner Floyd is pointing out.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, Jimmy, you didn't charge for the first, when you first told them that you couldn't do it, but you charged for the second one? Or?
We didn't charge for the executive order violation. We didn't charge for the, you know, it was a category 2 a violation of the COVID rules. We did not charge that. We charge more traditional liquor law violations. They're each category 3.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Chair.
Commissioner Rubel.
You know, when I was reading through this, I'm always amazed over the years that individuals get so wrapped up in letting people know how well they're doing, that they put their actions out for the world to see. And then they're surprised when the world sees it.
Yeah.
In this situation, it is, you know, hey, look at me, hold my beer, watch this. Someone held his beer and we watched. That's the ramifications of, unfortunately, putting too much out for the world to see. This is the consequences of putting that action out for the world to see, even though the doors are shut. Doors really weren't shut.
Right, right. And Commissioner Revolt, I completely understand that. I do. I just know the confusion and the lack of clarity at the very beginning with the executive order. We didn't know exactly, you know, the biggest thing we thought, well, it was just 6 people or less, 6 people or less. You know, we were all wrapped up. You know, he had 4 people in there. He on duty. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't like seeing that. It wasn't on duty in the sense that public safety wasn't an issue here. And I believe, I don't think that this was malicious or, I don't think he thought he was doing anything wrong. He was.
It's not in the spirit of what this is intended to protect against, is what I think Commissioner Floyd is getting at, that you're not supposed to drink on premise because you're supposed to be serving people in the bar. Obviously that wasn't going on. You know.
And I guess I worry about is that, okay, no one was there. I'm just having a good time. But since I'm putting it out on the World Wide Web, other licensees can say, oh, Marvin did it.
Right.
I can do it. And no one's going to say anything about it because Marvin got away with it. There are times that we have the people that we do business with think all you guys ever do is go after the little guy. You don't go after the big guys when they make a mistake. And I have to come back, that's not true. We try to treat everybody equitably. I didn't say fairly, equitably. And so I would like to say, I get it. But what concerns me is what the next guy, the next gal is seeing, because Marvin did it.
But the question, I guess, is that really a big deal if 4 people go to a premise and drink and put themselves on Zoom?
What I think it happened, we've had situations where it was 100 people in the bar and Marvin would walk up and serve himself a drink.
That would be way different. There was
Is
100
it?
people in the bar.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's the same rule.
if Commissioner Floyd goes to her own restaurant, and decides to pop up with some friends on Zoom and is having a glass of wine with them.
Is she on duty?
I'm not on duty. See, I'm sorry. I'm not on duty because my doors aren't open. My doors are not open to
So
the
you get to
public.
decide though, right? Whether you're on duty or not.
I'd like to
This is the
think
fi-
that.
This is a fine line.
Yeah. Did this person decide whether or not they were on duty?
Well, if I could say something about, I mean, we have definitions that have been established in case law and in rule, and we try to neutrally apply them. Now, I've handled another case, for example, doors were shut and the owner was serving a young bartender liquor after hours in order to get her drunk and molest her. And we were able to charge all the charges we can bring against that person for taking actions while on duty. Now, you might say it's his private property, the doors are closed, and nobody's in there. But in that circumstance, it is very important that we be able to charge this person for their liquor law violations. So by trying to kind of address each settlement after the fact based on its particular facts and then carve out exceptions into these long-established rules with a lot of precedent behind them, because a particular one doesn't seem malicious. You know, malicious is not part of the definition of being on duty. It's a strict liability thing. And if the commission is going to disprove settlements each time we try to follow the rules neutrally because the particular instance is uncomfortable for commissioners, we're going to have chaos in terms of how we apply our rules.
To clarify, the situation that you mentioned wasn't what went on at this one. I mean, from my understanding, he had a party. They were trying to raise some money. And he had, let's say he had it at his home instead of at the bar, would it still be a violation?
No.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think that's where the confusion arose with a lot of these is
They were closed.
yeah, that you started seeing people promoting on their social media. And they'd have DJ parties or whatever and raise funds, but they would do it from their home. And you know, I think that there was a clear message sent after this one in particular, because it was, as Commissioner Floyd mentioned, in April. It's a tricky one. I mean, but you know, I'm glad we didn't charge the more serious violation, but you know, I've got some heartburn on it too. I will just say, but you know, it's yeah, we've got our rules, we got to stick by them, but this was a very unprecedented time. I mean, what's to say what was on duty when essentially they were all shut down. They were, you know, like Commissioner Floyd said, they were trying to follow the 6-person rule versus, you know, so, and again, that is in no way meant to skirt the executive order. That, I mean, I think we all have a tremendous amount of respect for that and the importance of it, but I do think there was a lot of confusion. So I'll just put that out there from my point of view.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I just for there wasn't confusion by everyone because we had a lot of the industry and licensees ask us how you do these virtual things on premise, and we made some accommodations for that because they understood that you can drink in the bar when you're on duty. So, and I think that there is a real particular difficulty here about, you know, where our rubber meets the road regularly with non-COVID is what's after hours drinking, right? You close at 2, you go off, and being able to see those premises and what's there and prevent activities that are after hours is important. And this kind of is like that, except it was meeting the COVID standards and under a different time when you were technically never open, right? And I appreciate that.
Here's what I find very interesting. Michael, you were previously told by Commissioner Hopper that he appreciates the job you and your staff is doing, and that's very true. You've been around this for a long time. You've been doing this for a long time. And you have wisdom and history that none of us here can match. So you have your own concepts and ideas of what's right and what's wrong, and rightfully so. We come in as strangers every 2-3 years. We got another person on here, and aside from Commissioner Revelle and Commissioner Harper, the rest of this panel have been around here for a short time. At the very beginning, 3 years ago, I particularly made a pain in the ass out of everybody with these things because we were new and we have a responsibility. And that responsibility means we read this and we bring a completely new vision or ideas to what should be right or wrong. And whether we're right or wrong, it's indifferent. We're the commissioners and we have a right to ask those things. So Commissioner Floyd, she has an obligation, and rightfully so, to ask the questions that she does. I think it's so healthy to have these conversations, just to open up the idea of what we think is right or wrong. And Commissioner Revelle comes back and says, this is what we've been doing for many years, and he made some very cogent points as far as I'm concerned. But it's the give and flow of the conversation that's important, and that should never stop. Because that's the thing that we have our right to do. And I think it's nothing but very healthy that we continue. We're at the point right now, I think the commissioners will agree, we're pretty much on tune on what's going on in this stuff now. But it took us to Commissioner Revelle's and Commissioner Hoffman's dissatisfaction, and it took us almost 3 years to get to where they are now. But that's part of this whole operation. Am I right? I mean, it's part of the process, and I think it's a very healthy one. So if nobody has any other questions, let's take a vote on this.
Chair.
Yes.
I move to ratify the 2 stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Chair, can I propose to take them individually?
Yes, of course.
Can we do that, Commissioner Harper?
Chair, I'd like to restate my motion. I'd like to make I move to ratify the River Pig Saloon stipulated settlement agreement as proposed by staff. Is it the River Sea? Yeah.
Will you please take the rolls?
Commissioner Kern?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
No.
Commissioner Harper?
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus?
No.
Commissioner Revelle?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Commissioner Harper?
I move to ratify the stipulated settlement for Diamond Bear Bones, stipulated settlement agreement as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Curran?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper?
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus?
Yes.
Commissioner Revelle?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes. Okay, marijuana violation stipulation settlement agreements.
Chair Rosenbaum, members of the commission, we have 7 marijuana stipulated settlements proposed for your ratification. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Commissioners,
Chair Rosenbaum,
Commissioner Revelle.
in reviewing the marijuana issues that are out there, one of the things that I have to take a look at is that I think as an organization over the last 15 months, we tried to get as much information out to these licensees as possible in an attempt so they could understand what's going on. When I read through this list, it's like, oh my God, what have you people been doing?
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like reading this is like, I was asking my 17-year-old son, have you lost your mind? At some of the violations that are so out of the bounds of what the rules and regulations that we've been trying to do for the last 5 years. I want to thank the staff. I was asked, well, do we give education? So I said, okay, I'll step back. And I look at all these and I said, yes, we've given a lot of education over the last 17 months in an attempt to help people stay in business. But I got to say, I don't know what some of our people have been thinking, but it's not a business mode at all. It's just whatever.
And with that, Commissioner Raval, I would say that we've been so focused on things that I would say as a commission are not focused on the health and safety of protecting children, protecting the black market, and then protecting the market from illegitimate sales. And that's when I see a violation like what we just voted on, which was a very difficult thing for me to decide upon when we're looking at the River Pig Saloon. And then we look at the violations in the marijuana context. And I feel like we have to acknowledge the differences here and what we're putting. The marijuana violations to me are a no-brainer today. And we're looking at them. But what's been so hard for us is that some of the implementation of the rules, they have been ever changing. We went from one plan, we've gone from, there was baseline, and then we had the different dangers, and people, we kept telling people, be creative, pivot, change, put more money here to keep our licensees moving forward. And I feel like, for example, in that situation, they were being creative and thinking that they were trying to do something that was going to be a positive thing. And it turned out that they're going to be fined for it. So I do see that, in my mind, there's a big difference in these things. And so, my frustration is that I don't feel like my voice is being heard on that the COVID restrictions and the piling on and causing more fines are being understood. And I understand that we can technically get them because they were in the store and they were doing something to promote their restaurant, but they were still closed. And when you look at these marijuana violations, clearly we're in a different ballpark. And that's what I keep waiting to see some understanding that there has to be this understanding that what Commissioner Raval was talking about. We've done the educating, I feel like, in the marijuana. And I think we've spent so much time focused on, I've seen this in my own district, people tattletaling on each other, restaurant licensees tattling, so-and-so's doing this, they're not wearing masks, or this person's not wearing a mask, that we've lost sight of what it really means to keep our population safe with these industries. And so that's why I want to move away from some of these, Zoom meeting punishments and getting to where we're talking about the marijuana and the alcohol violations that are really putting people at risk. And I understand you can't, there is, being a lawyer, I understand that we have to apply the law fairly, but these stipulated settlement agreements give us that opportunity to have that flexibility. We can have flexibility with the stipulated settlement agreements. And so I would hope that, this is an unprecedented, something that hasn't happened in 100 years, that we can treat some of these things differently in that context. But anyway, that's what I would say is I agree with what Commissioner Raval is saying is we look at these, and to me, the marijuana is a no-brainer. We're seeing violations that I don't know if we need to remind them that it's not over, but that we're moving forward. We're going to be out there looking for these violations. It's not acceptable what these level of violations are that we're seeing. So,
Well, thank you for those thoughtful comments. I would say, that this is a small percentage, very small percentage of our licensees that come before you here. So while you tend to see perhaps, the worst, fortunately.
But that's all we're saying.
That's good to see, but, there are a lot of licensees, many marijuana licensees who are out there who have benefited from the education and are doing it right.
Michael, that's the only thing we see. That's the only thing we have. That's why I'm saying you know a lot more than we do. This is what we see.
Sure.
Chair Rosenbaum,
Commissioner Rubel.
I move to ratify this.
No, I, before you do that, I want to get some questions too. My father always told me if one person tells you something, think about it. If two people tell you the same thing, think real hard about it. And if three people tell you the same thing, think about doing it. I'm the third person who's going to make a comment on this. I couldn't agree more with both of you on this. And I don't have any specific questions about any one of these violations, but I like to look at the solution rather than the problem. So I'm looking at Tolis Consulting and Souls Green. And I'm sure that both the previous commissioners were thinking about those in particular or close to it. My question is not on what you did with that. My question is on the process. These are so, to me, outrageous looking at them, that these people have lost track of what it is to be a business. And they don't deserve to have a license. And you correctly did that. My question to you, and I have one after this, is what about the process that allows people like this to get into it in the first place? I mean, what kind of a process do you have? And you may not be the right one to answer this question, Michael, but what kind of process where you can at least understand the potential of having somebody of this nature run a business that is so oblivious to what they have to do that it ends up this way? What kind of safeguards can be in place? I don't understand the process of
Mr. Chairman, if you might, I'll bring Jason Hansen in. We'll do an informational briefing session again on the licensing process and what we look at. If you remember, we streamlined it in Oregon, right? It's qualifications based. You pass the background, you get the license, basically, right? You got to meet the qualifications on building and otherwise. But we don't do any judgment on what kind of business person you are. You're a citizen of the U.S., you get a background check. You got an opportunity to get into the marijuana business in Oregon. Our check is what we do in the field, what we look at. Now we're doing verification of compliance, where we want to be able to look at how they're implementing what they said they would implement in licensing. But obviously, some of these folks are not set up to be in business. And
so go ahead.
We did it.
Yeah, no, I'm asking the question.
We did it. We, one of the things, again, this is the old guy talking, is that one of the things we did, we went all over the state. And then one of the things that after doing that, to some of the people we met who wanted to get into the business, and Commissioner Melendez is so they're smiling. I still remember Salem. You can't tell me what to put in my cupcakes. You want it back. And we had meetings here on how to be in business 101. I got to tell you, it was a zoo. And as long as they passed the background, and we gave Maricopa after Maricopa for those individuals coming into the industry, because some of us only knew about putting people in jail with marijuana, not how to run a marijuana business. We did it. Fortunately, 5 years later, we're still seeing some of those individuals who didn't get the fact that you should have an attorney for a company. You may want to get an accounting. You might even want to have insurance on the building. You may want to get product liability. Well, what the hell is product liability? You're making food. So we did it. That was the process.
I know we did it, and in a subtle way, I'm asking the question, should we even be looking at some minimum oversight before people go into business? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just raising the question, that's all. Because this stuff is, as you guys said, this stuff is ridiculous. I mean, we're looking at this and it's just silly, you know. It's like the wild, wild west with some of these people. And not, they're very few. We only get to see the bad ones. I understand that. This is no dispersion on the industry. But it costs us more in the long run by having these people in here than taking a little while and cutting them out before they even get started.
Are the new positions going to possibly be able to bring some more oversight?
Well, clearly we'll have more in compliance. The licensing process is what it is, though. So getting the chance to get a license to be a business is there for them, right? And we streamline that because the background, the most pivotal protection action probably is the background check itself. We used to look at every lock and pick and turn and camera before we licensed them on site. Now we have the verification of compliance, so it's more on the compliance side where we're looking at those things. But I don't really know. So you can do a lot more up front, right? You can have them write a business plan, tell us their capital, more like we do with retail. Look at them, statutorily, that's probably too far. You could do that, but let's say you could. But I'd argue that, as we look at what we're doing out there, vast majority of them get that we have rules. We have some that are failure to thrive out there. And we had a lot of them when we initially started that just, moving through, moved them out. I actually think we've got a fairly adept, competent licensee base out there that's doing a pretty good job. And we got a small percentage of the dunderheads that go out and, maybe 10% of problems inside our system. We even see, Paul, remind you when we went out and did Operation Good Harvest and look out there during the harvest in Southern Oregon. The first one was a mess. And then we said we were coming out and looking, and the second one we saw, but now they get it, right? And we go out there and they know what they're supposed to do. Our licensees and our educational model has worked to elevate both our ability to see things and understand the industry and the industry knowing what we expect. And I think we're a lot closer. We still have problems, but some of these are now more and more of an exception than they were.
I remember looking at how many new dispensers, processors, how many a year, roughly, new ones?
Jason,
I
are you
remember
online?
seeing how much?
I was seeing if Jason's online because we haven't had as many, right? Because we have the moratoriums on. We did last year. We probably did 450-ish, Bill, new licenses.
And all across the board, 450.
Yeah, in total.
That's great. It's a lot.
That's a lot. I was thinking in terms of we could have a subcommittee looking at it, we can't do that.
Yeah, so we had more churn.
If we had 20, we could, but we
And
can't.
again, I was gonna say, my question of oversight was more, are we going to have maybe more inspectors, or maybe the ability to get out to more of the places that are in business?
Yeah, and that is clearly increasing with the budget, and we've continued to move up, and we'll have even more, although we are doing some other activities now, working with ODA on testing hemp products soon here under 3,000. So we've picked up some different kind of work this particular biennium, but it's.
I think that one of the things we're going to have is, as soon as this federal legislation goes through, and it could go through in a year,
right?
We're going to have another kind of conversation. I think, because of what I'm hearing in the grapevine is that you're going to have a lot of people who are in the industry here in Oregon who believe that somehow we should protect their ability to do what they want to do when competition comes in. I want to sell my license, and I want to sell it not for $1,000, but for $150,000 because, you know, this new organization, cigarette company or liquor company or group of investors want to enter into the market. And we still have rules and regulations, but I think we're going to have another conversation about the business model that we're looking at when the competition comes in. You know, you have the boys and girls who went to the Ivy League schools who are representing these LLCs, and how business is going to be done in Oregon. It is not just what's happening in Southern Oregon with the cartel, but what's going to happen throughout Oregon when we say we want to be inclusive and we have the industry saying, no, wait a minute, you're supposed to protect what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. I think that's the next conversation.
And that's preparing 5 years in advance for what the hell's coming down the pipe.
And we don't have 5 years.
And we don't have 5 years to do it, but we should start thinking about it.
We got about 24 months.
Well, that's why I'm bringing this up. The other question I want to bring up is Exodus Wellness Center. Not what you said, but there's so many of these businesses, again, that are not being canceled out. They're getting fines. And it's obvious they don't know how to do business. You know, I mean, they're doing business, but they're not doing it well. And it's not bad enough where we need to take their license, but it's certainly bad enough they need education, more education than they're getting. And again, it comes back to the same thing. When we're put on notice that these organizations have serious problems in functioning, you know, what can we do to either watch them closely to make sure it doesn't happen again, help them, or at least be on the lookout that there's probably going to be more problems with them. And Steve, it comes back to the same issue again. If we're put on notice that some of these organizations have got serious problems, what, if anything, can we do? Being proactive.
That's a good question, because I haven't thought about the educational thing, and we spent so much time educating to our rules when we first started, and now we sort of reached this crescendo where we thought people kind of know the rules. That's why licensing was able to be streamlined. So I do think it is, what we did on verification and compliance is really in that vein, because it's a, we can come, we'll look, we can warn you. It's an opportunity for education and change and getting it right, because we don't have to write them fully up and give them the opportunity. But if they don't get it, and we're back, eventually you get the violation, and it's progressive in that way, progressive sanction. And I think we haven't really got down that verification and compliance work to really see what that looks like. You know, we just initiated it over last summer, so it's just sort of filtering into our system. I think over the next, 10 months, we'll see a lot more about what's working on it, what it's missing, what it's hitting, and how it's helping to educate these businesses.
Let me throw something against the wall. That's what I like to do. Okay, throw it against the wall. If it sticks, fine. There's probably going to be 15, 20, 30 of these a year where you're really looking at it saying that, they're going to come to us. They're not, obvious of all the people out there. So let's say there's 30 or 35 people who really have serious problems operating. They have $10,000 in fines. They have 4 category 4s, 3 category 2s, and they're just loose as heck with their business. Why not, if we get to that point and we give them the fines and we vote on this thing, why not create either a regulation? I think we could do it by regulation, that in order to keep their license, they have to come in front of a subcommittee of this commission and talk to us about their continuing operation. If they can't get the message after coming in front of the commission, they're not gonna do it at all, and we're gonna have a problem with them anyway. So why not do something like
I think that's a productive path, Mr. Chairman, and, in alcohol settlements, we usually, what are they when we write special things in? What's the technical word I'm looking for, Michael?
Well, the restrictions on license.
Restrictions, right? We do restrictions on licensing.
We do that in marijuana
Yeah,
too.
we-
Yeah.
We've
Instead
done
of
it less
holding up a chair,
prolifically
you
in
could do-
marijuana.
You could mandate
Yeah.
some education for
Yeah.
them. So you could say, as part of this, you have to take
Yeah.
4 hours.
Well, that's one thing which we can do, but, and again, I may be wrong, but if they come in front of us, okay, and they understand that's one of the ramifications of their bad process in doing business, they're either gonna get the message that if you do it again, you're gone. And I think it's a good first step in getting it into their brains. You gotta do better in terms of operating. Now, as long as it's 15, 20, 30 people a year, we can handle it. It's just 400, we can't do
I got a quick
that. I'm just
question.
throwing it against you.
So on the alcohol side of things, you have to get a service permit, right? Every 4 or 5 years, you have to renew your service permit, and you've got to go through classes, hours to renew that, even to issue it. Do we do that on the marijuana side of things? Is that every 4 or 5 years, you've got to renew that and go through? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
I'm seeing.
marijuana worker permit, right, expires and you have to redo the education. That's correct.
But it's not quite as robust as the alcohol side. I mean, the
Yeah.
marijuana permit is lit. I think that there could be some room for, that's a great, I think that's maybe where there's some room for improvement. And I think the industry would agree with that too, because I've heard a lot of folks say that they'd like to have greater education. I think the handler's permit was set up at the beginning, and have we changed it or updated it much, or is it mostly the same as it was from the start?
The worker permit education, I'm sorry, I don't have
Yeah.
specific information.
On the alcohol side of things, it's quite robust. It's hours, it's 4 or 5 plus
I've
hours.
taken the
Have you
test.
taken it?
Yeah.
It's extensive. And you can't skirt it, you can't get around it. You've got to, grin and bear it the whole process. So maybe that is something to think about.
There is a process in licensing, Chair Rosenbaum, for, if somebody has a poor record of compliance, and it meets the standard established under the rule for a poor record of compliance, where restrictions can be imposed that Director Marks was, I think, alluding to. And we have several cases actually before you for approval under the licensing that involve restrictions that are imposed for various reasons. Some of them are poor record of compliance, others are for other reasons.
So there's standards and poor records of compliance?
Yeah,
Would you send them to us, please? I really would like to see that. When you get a chance, will you send it to the commissioners? You want to see that?
Are we allowed to see?
Are we allowed
I
to?
would ask, can we see?
I would say it's.
Well, they're in the next packet, actually, for settlement, the poor record of compliance cases. But the rules that are in place, obviously, they're your rules. We can provide you some information on that.
Sure.
There's also a process, of course, you're familiar with the step discipline. So if somebody has the same violation within the same 2-year period, the penalties increase. There's also an aggravation factor when somebody has 3 or more violations under circumstances showing disregard for law or failure to control the premises. We can aggravate up to cancellation. And we do use that aggravation basis in AHD. So there are mechanisms in place, which is not to say that, they're not solving all the problems. So additional component is something worth looking into. But I'm just saying there are some mechanisms in place to deal with people who have frequent problems following the rules. In this particular case, in Exodus, before we bring a settlement to you, I mean, these are 2019 violations. Before we bring a settlement to you, we conference with the Public Safety Division. We say, does this person have some new stuff going on? Are there reports in the pipeline for violations? And we don't bring it before you if the answer is yes. In this case, the answer is no, which suggests they had these problems in 2019. They have consequences, and they haven't had subsequent problems, so maybe they've learned something.
One of the things that I think that the industry may be in position to have us increase the training throughout, not only for those who serve, but those who own. In the beginning, we got a lot of pushback from the industry because of their concern about our control of them. They hadn't had any control previously. And so all of a sudden they were into the world where there was a lot of control. I think we're at a point now, I'm sure many of you have gotten phone calls from the industry about why did you have so many of this? Why do you have so many growers? Why do you have so many retail operations? You're putting me out of business. I have to remind them that, excuse me, you were in the business and you told us you didn't want us to control how many stores you had, how many growers you had. So here we are. And they're in a fight for their lives to stay in business as business people. So perhaps in the future, we can talk about how we increase the training requirements for everybody who's in the business. So maybe this 30 or 40 we see goes down to 10 or 15. But I think it's important that the industry won't give us a pushback all the way to the legislature if we were to try to increase some training.
You know what, I'm laughing, and you particularly will understand this. There's no human being in the world who goes in front of a grand jury who ever the same again. When they come out, they understand what they've been through. When a person who has no experience goes in front of a federal or state judge and has to raise their right hand and testify, it's an experience that they remember for the rest of their life. And when they have to come in front of a regulatory body, it's the same experience. They understand that it's serious. And so I'm just trying to be helpful because it helps the whole industry if you can take the people who you still can save in business and impress upon them that we're here trying to help you, but this is your last chance. And, you know, I'm very interested in seeing what the guidelines are on that because I'm not interested in doing 400 people in here. Nobody else is. But if we can save 15 to 20 people by asking them to come in front of us, maybe we should do it.
Chair?
Yes.
Well, I'm really biting my bottom lip. You know, bad to you may not be bad to me. And we can't regulate success. Some people just like to be status quo and they just love their product and just love what they're producing. But take, for instance, these issues like I started the conversation, the applicant, you know, waives any rights to come back. They've accepted these issues. When we first started and voted and approved the candidates, there was a workbook. It was an initial workbook because we had issues with unscrupulous attorneys trying to, you know, people think they're going to get in the industry, they got to pay an attorney. And people literally started out just reading this booklet and doing it themselves. Now we're at a different level. We're dealing with issues that far exceed where and what they thought. The initial issue was trying to get people out of prison, trying to make sure all the things that were involved, say for instance, when we're speaking specifically about marijuana and cannabis, would be addressed in cutting out the black market. The cases we see, I personally feel, isn't about the black market. Personally, I feel it's about, sometimes it could be about just creating this enforcement arm in the state. And I don't want to go crazy on this, but again, these people will learn. They learn by these cases and the counseling they get. So Michael, please continue to send out the counseling. But when you have something as egregious where we have to take the license, you know, we got to go 100%. So I see some people just can't handle it. We had issues where people were literally dying and we were still going after the spouse. So I just want to share that we cannot regulate success. There's a bunch of losers in the state. We have to accept that. And we go forward. I personally throwing things on the wall. I don't need to have you come in front of me, Michael, and beat you down because you lost 100,000. But then again, you have investors of $1 million and trying to figure out who the investors are. So again, I just feel that we need to go forward with this. We need to stay the course. I'm excited about the new budget, and I'm excited about this commission because I can tell you what, we all care.
That's right.
I mean, we do. We really do care. So I'm excited that the people that were voting to ratify their settlement, they've agreed to it, and so it had to be a specific amount of counseling that got them to this point. So.
And you're right, we do care. That's the whole issue here. We do care.
Yeah, and it's something that we took to heart with the federal government. We take to the heart of our government here in the state of Oregon. And as commissioners, we're in the streets, and we see it, and we get the phone calls sometimes first. But again, I know that some people, they won't get it. They're not gonna get it. So thank you, Chair, for letting me blurt that out.
This is very productive as far as I'm concerned. There's no other questions. Let's take the roll.
I move to ratify 7 marijuana stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolve,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes.
And Commissioner Maliz?
Oh, Commissioner Melinas,
Yes.
sorry.
Licensing stipulated settlement agreements. These are my favorites. Michael, go ahead.
Chair Rosenbaum, members of the commission, we have 5 stipulated licensing settlements for your ratification. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, one very simple question. The Falady processor and producer, what's the relationship of the person who's taking over? I couldn't figure that one out. Is it a cousin, a brother?
This is not actually a sale. I believe this is a new application, both for the marijuana processor and producer license. And it's Mr. Cahook, who's one of the managers of the LLC, has a prior compliance history with us.
Right.
And it's actually, he has 4 category 3 violations that took place. I actually don't have the date down, but I believe it was 2018. I handled that case. And there were also 2 category 1s in that same charge letter. But what had happened is Mr. Cahook had a partner whose name is there in the restrictions before you, O'Day Alhuli,
Right.
who was really the on-premises, hands-on owner. And he had problems with the law that were completely unrelated to the business and that his partners didn't know about, but led to him being charged and convicted of some serious crimes. And so that situation is kind of stuck to Mr. Cahook, if you will. And I will say I've talked to Mr. Cahook. He seems, honorable. He's trying to do the right thing, and he didn't know about what his partner was doing. And we sometimes, there's an unfortunate relationship there. There were a number of other violations. The category 3 had to do with on-premises violations. So regardless of whether he's there hands-on or not, he's still responsible for those. I will also note that the same restrictions we're proposing here were placed on another business, 305 Collective LLC, which you did approve, and they were licensed back in June of 2020. They're current. They've had no charged violations. There's nothing pending that we're aware of. So they're running that business successfully, subject to these same restrictions. And the restrictions are intended to be sure that Mr. Alhouli have no involvement in this business, and there's no indication he will. I don't even believe from the last information he's still in the country. And then the other restrictions focus, just as you were talking about, on education, being sure because the prior violations had to do with operation of the seed to sale CTS cannabis tracking system. They have to do with being sure that licensee and other employees are well educated in the operation of CTS.
Sure. Yeah, and I see that on bullet point number 6. All employees of the business shall successfully complete CTS basic training. And so could this line be on in stipulated settlement agreements for alcohol and marijuana? I mean, is this the only place that we can put it, or can this be used across the board?
Well, of course, for marijuana, it only would apply to marijuana, but we generally do not issue a license restriction unless there's been a problem. But there are, you could choose by rule to step up educational requirements for licensees and for employees of businesses, because they do have the worker permit requirement that has some education, which includes some CTS education, but this particular statement is a higher level of education. And if you chose, you could do that through rule. What I would say is it wouldn't be so much a license restriction, because that has different implications, as it would just be kind of a preparatory to getting license requirement. Because license restrictions, the difficulty with them, they're pretty strict. If you've got a license restriction and you violate it, it's a Category 1 violation. So I don't think we'd want to restrict every license we issue right off the bat.
But that's what the chair asked. It's a different type of way to do it. The chair asked, can you bring these people back? So you pose this restriction. How do you monitor it?
Well, this is monitored by Public Safety Division, by the inspector who's assigned.
What steps do they take, if any?
That's a question for public safety, and I'm sorry, I just don't know.
That's fair enough.
But I'll answer it generally for you, right? They should be aware of restrictions. I'm not saying we have great oversight over specific restrictions, because there's some more notification, but they would be verifying the training occurred, that the restriction condition was met. So they look for those things and would be doing that.
Yeah, but Steve, we're getting the impression there's no proactive operation here. It's something that you get wind of after the fact. So, that's my opinion.
I think it's not systemic. I would agree with that. As a lot of our compliance is not, right? It's complaint based and agreed to.
Well, in this instance, as soon as you ratify the settlement, the terms of it will be sent by the Hearings Division to Public Safety, so that the inspectors are aware of the restrictions on this particular license and can enforce them.
Look, we can't do everything. I understand that, but you're talking about such a limited group of individuals that are involved here. We can do something. If it's a limited number of people, we can do something proactive, because these are the people who are coming to our attention. So we'll discuss this certainly more as it comes. Any other further discussion? We need a motion and a vote on the stipulated settlement agreement.
Chair, I move to ratify the 5 licensing stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
No. Okay, temporary action. Thank you, Michael. As usual, you always get grilled.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We love you anyway.
Always.
Good morning, Madeline.
Good morning, Chair Rosenbaum and Commissioners.
Nice to see you in
Nice
person.
to see you all in person. For the record, my name is Madeline Kane, Policy Coordinator for the Oregon Control Commission. Today, I just have 2 temporary actions for your consideration. The first rule package for your consideration is the 2021 Alcohol Bill and Technical Amendments Temporary Action. So the Oregon legislature passed Senate Bill 406 and House Bills 2264 and 2363 at the 2021 legislative session. These bills had emergency clauses, which require immediate action on the Chapter 845 Oregon Administrative Rules pertaining to alcohol. The amendments in this package will update delivery definitions, qualifications for a direct shipper permit, the privileges of a temporary sales license, acceptable forms of identification, delivery privileges of full on-premises and limited on-premises, and keg sale requirements in advertising in retail stores. If approved, these rule amendments will go into immediate effect and will become permanent at the same time as the other legislatively required changes with a January 1st, 2022 effective date. With that said, and technology willing, when staff are logged on to answer any questions you may have about this action.
Commissioner?
I just have one silly question. I was reading through it, and it didn't, and maybe I missed it, it didn't say you must have a driver's license. Is that necessary?
In our current rules?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to look into that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sure. These take immediate, or are they emergency clause? Are we gonna do advisory committees on them, or?
Yeah, so these rules will be included in the larger scale, like rules advisory committee meetings, but because they have emergency clauses, they are required to go.
Okay, let's take, I guess we gotta take them individually.
Yeah, and what do you mean?
Commissioner Hopper?
You read them all off.
Yeah, you read them all off.
Yeah. Well,
Chair Rosenbaum.
Commissioner Bell.
I move to temporary amend 845-005-0416, 845-005-0417, 845-005-0440, 845-006-0335, 845-006-0391, 845-006-0392, 845-006-0396, 845-013-0090, 845-015-0177, and suspend 845-006-0441 effective July 16, 2021 to December 31st, 2021.
That was Commissioner Hopper's job. You just took it away. So we do have to vote on these individually, right?
Each of the amendments in this package or the 2 separate packages?
And well, it looks like there's 3 separate packages here. Isn't it?
Yeah, there are 2, I think we're only going to do 2 today because the third package, or
I think we're gonna hold the record.
Chairman, I might recommend on House Bill 3000, which we're waiting
Right.
for the governor to sign. If we don't hear before this meeting is concluded that it is
We're gonna have
signed
to do
today,
another one, yeah.
well, but I might suggest that we hold the meeting open since we've noticed it for today to 5:05 or something in case it gets signed today.
Okay.
We could reconvene and take action then. Otherwise, we'll as soon as it gets signed and notice it, we need 24 hours notice to get it back on the agenda. I'm probably recommending, Laura, that we do a notification for tomorrow in case it gets signed again. Because we do need to take action before next week. We're planning on being in the field next week, so I'm
Well,
gonna
and
need
with, that's fine. One very quick question. on the inventory reconciliation, what was the impetus for that? I mean, what was the thinking behind it? That's the average rather than the individual plan specific weight.
So they ultimately get packaged into a common package, and we made them weigh them separately, and we allow an average weight, reduce the cost, the labor, the effort going in, and we didn't feel there was a public safety issue with having to do the individual harvested plant weights one at a time. You can combine those weights off the harvest that we knew occurred that day, put it all together.
But it's on that day when they did the weight.
Yes, it's an incredible efficiency that we put forward. They've asked for some others. I'll just mention quickly. They're really looking for some changes in the number of plants we tag in the field, mature plants, and we think there are changes there that we'll work with in metric, not in law, but in pass, and then actually that's the other one.
No, that's fine, as long as it's not the same day, there's no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is a great savings for them, something we could do, no public safety, discernible effort, and an efficiency and cost savings for the industry.
Okay, well, I'm completely lost on what we're voting on in terms of 2 or 3 of them, but whatever it is, I mean, I understand what we're voting on, I just.
One at a time. So the first rule package, that 2021 alcohol technical fixes is the first.
Thank you, that's what I've been trying to get out of my message. Let's take the vote on 2021.
Okay. Commissioner Curran.
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Harper.
Yes.
Commissioner Melinas.
Yes.
Commissioner Oval.
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Now, what's the next one? The adult use?
The third one.
This is the inventory reconciliation.
The last.
That's the last, the
Yeah.
third one. Okay, then that's the one we're waiting
So the second rule amendment for your consideration is the inventory reconciliation temporary and initial action.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
So you're saying we're gonna bypass the adult use cannabis package?
for. Only until the governor signs.
She hasn't signed it
The
yet.
governor has not signed it,
The governor
so
has
we
to sign
can't
it.
act on it.
So we're gonna keep on the roll over.
So the rule is this the first portion of 0300?
No, we're gonna get, we read it into it, if it doesn't close, if it closes by the end of the day, we could just take a vote on it.
But there are other rulemaking issues in this package. The adult use cannabis package is not just 3,000 something, yeah.
Which legislative bills are included in it.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
these changes are only from House Bill.
They're all 3,000, it's just not the field testing, it also does the concentration limits for the hemp products that we're required to establish in, which will enable the prohibition on sales to minors.
Thank you.
Okay, so also, the second rule amendment for your consideration is the inventory reconciliation temporary and initial action. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission has committed to streamlining and simplifying processes for licensees. As the 2021 harvest season begins, Commission staff have identified another opportunity to increase efficiency. Currently, licensed marijuana producers must enter the individual wet weight of each plant, each harvested plant into the cannabis tracking system at the time of harvest. This rule amendment would allow licensees to use the average wet weight of plants harvested together as a group for the entered weight of each plant. This change in the inventory reconciliation rule will help licensees to more easily enter data, resulting in less staff hours and more overall accuracy. As the OLCC uses this data entered by licensees to complete legislative reports and to make policy decisions, staff proposes to make this, to have this rule go into immediate effect before peak harvest season. With that said, and technology willing, staff are logged on to answer any questions you may have about this.
Okay.
We need another motion.
Yes, we do.
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Harper. Okay, inventory reconciliation. I move to initiate rulemaking and temporary amend 845-025-7580, effective July 16, 2021 to December 31st, 2021.
Commissioner Curran.
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Harper.
Yes.
Commissioner Melinas.
Yes.
Commissioner Oval.
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Okay. Director Marks, you've got the floor. Thank you, Madeline.
Of course, thank you.
I won't use much of it, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I haven't been in that today. I'm Steve Marks, Executive Director, because this is an audio record.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I said most of what I had to say during the legislative briefing about where we are and moving forward and supporting the industry. But in terms of administration, I feel like we're in a very good place. We got a lot of resources. I do feel like our technology, given the process that we have to go through with StageGate and the CIO, I do feel like we are on track with our processes. You'll have the opportunity, some of you, to talk to Christy, and she can help inform you more on that process and how it's going. But that feels very good. With the LOA out of work, Chris is going to get a more frequent full staffing of the warehouse, which we've had difficulties. Chris said operating margin. I think that's going to change. So warehouse operations, picking every day on the individual bottles is going to be happening more regularly again as we come out of sort of post-COVID regulations. And then we're moving into September, sort of the more official reopening of the agency and what that looks like. We've been working towards that. It's really interesting. Remember, we were an agency that was poised to think about telecommuting work even in advance of COVID. Now we're trying to figure out how that's going to work as people come back. So we're going through the whole planning exercise, unit by unit, almost person by person, on looking at how we're going to bring how and when people will be back in the building together, those that are necessary, that have been here basically working in the building, and work through those issues. It's pretty interesting how, Will and I were talking, and 2 years ago, he'd said, well, if I had to come in the building 3 days a week, that would be fantastic, right? And now it's maybe 2 days a week or one. There's bargaining going on around that, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think, ultimately there's going to be a little frustration. I think everyone's not going to get exactly what they want as we rematch sort of the workforce in the building here, but I think we're going to give people the flexibility they need to be able to do the work and for us to get the outcomes you expect from us. So I'm hoping we get those evolving, adapting rules to recreate in a workplace post-COVID. Everyone's struggling with it. We'll have our own struggles, but I feel like, we're going to hit at the 95% mark and most of it right, and have some difficulties to work through as we move back to open status. So we're looking forward to that. And other than that, I don't know how we're keeping the record open. I might need the chairman or someone to close the meeting if it's not signed at the end of the day. So I think you'll have to come back to close the meeting.
Well, I'll come back in at 3:30 or 3 o'clock, so there's no problem with that.
Could we possibly just recess this meeting until 5:30? And if we do need to reconvene, we would do it virtually, and I would communicate via email and send a link. And would that work?
Yeah.
It works.
Could you also put the meeting date on the record? Because I'm not sure that it was recording in your opening
I
statement.
did say it.
Yeah, but I don't think we were recording. So that would
Okay.
be great.
And so this is what's today's date? I know, the 15th? This is July 15th, 2021, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission meeting. Is that good enough?
Yep, and recess.
Thank you. And before we close, I just want to mention, I know we have people viewing and listening. The commission and commissioners are 100% COVID compliant. Now, just want to make sure I put that in record so that, I think we're one of the first to come back together after the governor's stated, 7%, you come back. And I just wanted to mention the excitement I have about the bottle bill also. I think I didn't know that it was such an exciting point or position with the commission, man. Collecting cans is exciting. So, and I got my little card deal. And then I just want to share that, you know, in regards to our workforce, we're pro in regards to compliance and masking up and getting our shots, and it is part of that the executive director said it's about in regards to unions and making sure that we're in compliance with, you know, their wishes. And I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And finally, I just want to share that it's all about the workforce. I hope that we stay diverse and equity, and we include all types of people here in the state, and especially with the numbers that we have in our new budget. I just want to make sure we mention that, and it's something that I've been proposing and sharing for the number of years I've been a commissioner. So thank you all, thanks staff and people, especially in human resources, that know this is possible. Thanks.
Before we adjourn,
We're going to recess.
before we recess, Deputy Director Higgins, would you like to say a couple of words? We haven't heard from you in a long time.
You want a couple of words?
For the record, it's Higglin.
It's been so long you forgot my name. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, I will hit the Deputy Director. Gosh, a couple of words. I would tell you that from an operational standpoint, with everything you've heard today about the budget that's been approved, we are loaded operationally with all the staff issues we've had from the pandemic, especially in the warehouse, but really across the organization. The stress level is really high on employees and high on all of us for staff. And so when Director Marks talks about telecommuting, because that's one of my primary things right now, my message is a little different, is we've got a great opportunity here to help staff, for all of us to be flexible, because we've learned a lot in the last 12 to 14 months. But we've agreed that as an executive team, we can do it easily and just have one standard across the organization and say, okay, we're going to let you telecommute up to 2 days a week. But honestly, we just don't think that's the right answer. The right answer is, let's take it by a case-by-case basis and be flexible where we can be flexible. If some people don't have to be here 5 days a week and they can get their work done, that's great. Others, we're a public agency. We have to open up September 1st. We have to have people at the front desk September 1st to service people, you know, and at the staff level, that's tough because now some people have to be here and some people don't. And balancing that whole thing will be a challenge, like Director Marks said. But I think on the other side of that, it's a great opportunity. We can share resources. We can do creative things about how we want to manage the agency on a day-to-day basis. But like I said, this next biennium, we're going to have a new building in 3 years, 2024. Just that alone. That project is exciting to me. It keeps me up at night thinking about it, but it keeps me excited and motivated. And then the regulation and everything else we do on a regular basis has just changed over the last year. So I think we have a lot of opportunities moving forward, but a lot of challenges. Things are different today, and now we're trying to change them again. People have been home for the last 14 months, and now we got to bring them back. And many of them don't want to come back. But we're a public agency, we have to serve Oregonians, and people are going to have to come back to do that. Not just here, but throughout the region. So that whole messaging and what our mission is and why we exist, as opposed to personal preferences, that's a balance that we're going to be working on a regular basis as we move towards September 1st. So that was more than a couple of words.
No, listen, I'm very glad you said that, because I'm very much concerned about one thing. I understand what you just said, and we are right now making decisions on space that's going to affect us for the next 30 years. And times are changing. When we're looking at what our new space is going to be, we have to be cognizant of what those changes are very, very carefully, because it is a different ballgame. And nobody does anything unilaterally. We do this as a team. I understand that. But one of the things that I am going to present both to Steve and to you and to staff is that once the property is determined or where we're going to buy it, what we did at the Port of Portland, we need to do here, at least in my head. And that is create a subcommittee of the commission to work with you guys in terms of the layout and the construction and everything else of the building. And I feel very strongly about that because we have some very good people on this commission. And I think they can help immensely, especially in the planning stage. So we'll talk about that thing. But I feel very strongly that this would be a very, very positive thing for everybody.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commission, I would echo those comments. I don't have any problem with that at all. I think what you'll find over the next 30 days, you'll see some things today, and then we talked about next month, you'll have a little executive session. Now you're going to be exposed to DAS Real Estate, and they'll really talk about the process. I mean, we're the owners of this, right? But we have a support mechanism through the state that's out doing much of the legwork for us. And I think you'll get more education behind that whole process, and then where you can plug yourselves in.
Right.
I'm so very clear where you can plug in, where it might be a little difficult to plug in because it's a public process. We got to be careful with confidentiality and all those types of things. So over the next 30 days, I think to hit your point directly, we'll plug you in where you need to be plugged in so you're comfortable. Because again, at the end of the day, this is a huge investment. And the
If you
commission
don't
is,
plug us in, we'll make sure you do.
I know you will, but I will plug you in because I'm not speaking just for the director. I don't want to stand out there all by myself and say I made this decision. I want your support and your acknowledgement and your consideration, right? And that ultimately you support what we're doing and moving forward, and we need that support.
Well, I already have an idea who should be on that subcommittee. Meeting adjourned.
Recess.
Recess. Meeting
Till 5:30 p.m.
5:30.
Yeah.
5:30. Thank you, everybody.
For the record, this is Commissioner Revolve. It is Thursday, July the 15th at 5:30, and I am hereby adjourning the meeting for the OLCC meeting as on this date, and we will reconvene at another time. This meeting is adjourned.